swear my brain rejected them. Like, no way. No chance this is real. It genuinely felt like someone was playing a prank, like someone slipped an AI image into my feed just to mess with people. Because that belly didn't just look off, it looked wrong. The shade didn't match the rest of her body at all. It wasn't subtle either, it jumped out immediately. Darker. Noticeably darker. And once you see it, you...
To tell the truth, I spoke to very few friends of Meghan because she put a fatwa on anyone talking to me. The whole description she does of the Portland hospital, the birth, that was completely fabricated.
She was also furious about the whole surrogacy business, not only legally, but morally.
Can't unsee it. And the thing is, it wasn't just me clocking this. People everywhere started pausing, zooming, comparing screenshots, lining up photos side by side. Mothers, midwives, nurses, women who've been pregnant once, twice, 5 times, all saying the same thing. That doesn't look right. Then came the comments about movement, swinging, side to side. People asking questions nobody could easily answer. What started as a few squinted looks at red carpet photos turned into something much bigger. A rabbit hole so deep people were losing entire evenings inside it. Timelines that didn't match, stories that shifted depending on the interview, medical claims that made actual doctors stop and say, wait, what? And this wasn't about one weird photo. It wasn't one bad angle. It was pattern after pattern. Once you notice it, there is no going back. And when she showed up at Albert Hall, that's when everything exploded. According to the timeline she herself was putting out there, she was supposed to be around 8 weeks pregnant. 8 weeks. Let that sink in. But the photos told a completely different story. That wasn't 8 weeks. That looked like 5 months minimum. And listen, you don't need a medical degree for this. Anyone who's ever seen a pregnant woman knows the difference between early first trimester and a full rounded bump. At 8 weeks, most women aren't showing at all. Maybe a slight bloating, maybe a tiny hint, but subtle. What showed up at Albert Hall was not subtle. It was undeniable. People started comparing her photos to standard pregnancy progression charts. They pulled up images of women at 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks. The difference was glaring. And then came the color issue again. Her stomach appeared several shades darker than the rest of her body. That's the opposite of what normally happens. When skin stretches, it thins, it lightens. That's basic biology. So why was her belly darker than her arms, her face, her legs?
No, whoever heard of a baby bump being so variable, and not to mention swinging from side to side?
People tried to explain it away. Lighting, dress fabric, camera angle. But then more photos surfaced. Different angles, different lighting. Same result. That color difference stayed there like a neon sign screaming for attention. And it wasn't just online trolls saying this. Women who'd been pregnant were saying they'd never seen anything like it in their own lives. Then things got even stranger. She refused to use the hospital traditionally used by royals, refused the usual medical staff. And sure, on its own, you could argue privacy, personal choice. Everyone has a right to decide how they give birth. That's fair. But when you stack that decision on top of everything else, the size discrepancy, the color issue, the timeline confusion, it stops looking like an isolated choice. It starts looking like another piece in a much bigger puzzle. And then came the birth of Archie, or at least the version of events surrounding it, because no one could pin down exactly when anything happened. Announcements didn't line up, details were vague, timelines were muddy, something that should have been straightforward turned into a guessing game. Information kept shifting, official statements felt oddly unclear, and people were left scratching their heads.
Why is the belly several shades browner than anywhere else? It's not supposed to.
Then the story itself started changing. Not small changes, major shifts. One interview paints pregnancy as glowing, joyful, full of smoothies and baby kicks, laughing about cravings. That breezy, relatable version of motherhood. And then suddenly in another interview, it's trauma, fear, emotional devastation. Same pregnancy, same time frame, 2 completely different narratives. And that's where Tom Bauer comes comes in. Because he didn't accuse, he didn't dramatize, he simply lined things up. What she said, when she said it, side by side, dates attached. And when you see it like that, the inconsistencies scream. One version doesn't mesh with the other, details morph, timelines blur. It's not that the story changes entirely.
She's clearly doing this because she's trying to prove to the mainstream media, because now they're starting to talk about this.
It's remixed depending on the audience. Joy here, trauma there, relatability over here, sympathy over there, each retelling carefully shaped. And it wasn't just the pregnancy story. Even the story of how she and Harry met kept shifting. Who introduced them? Where it happened? The details never settled. For something so recent, it had an alarming number of versions. Then people started tracking dates, really tracking them. Notepads, screenshots, online detective boards, palace calendars versus interview claims, photos with timestamps next to statements about how far along she supposedly was, and the math just didn't work. Weeks off, sometimes months. You can't be barely pregnant and heavily pregnant at the same time. Biology doesn't bend like that. And sometimes the contradictions came straight from her own words. One interview says one thing, another says something completely different. That's what Bauer called soft overlaps. Dates that weren't outright wrong, just flexible, shifting to fit the narrative of the moment. Then came the hospital stories. One version sounded calm, almost casual, fast food jokes, light-hearted delivery. Then later it became dangerous, touch and go, medical emergency, same birth. Completely opposite descriptions. Then there was the claim that she left the hospital within an hour after a high-risk pregnancy. With epidurals involved, doctors laughed at that. You don't leave that fast. You're monitored, checked, observed. That's not optional. That's standard medical practice. And then there is the 65 pounds claim. 65 pounds gained during pregnancy. But where? Her arms stayed thin. Her face barely changed. Legs the same. All the weight seemingly existed only in the belly. Women who've been pregnant immediately clocked how unusual that is. Weight distributes. Balance shifts. Movement changes. Yet there are photos of her crouching in heels, moving quickly, bending with ease, no waddle, no struggle, no altered center of gravity. It didn't align with physical reality. And emotionally, the story kept transforming. Early interviews showed a light, yoga-loving, relatable mom-to-be. Later interviews painted a woman barely surviving. Each version perfectly tailored to the audience watching. Sympathy when needed. Relatability when useful. Strength when required. Tom Bauer never outright accused, he just documented. And by doing that, he exposed something bigger than a pregnancy story. He exposed a method, a pattern, a way narratives are shaped, reshaped, and adapted to maintain control. And once you see that, you can't stop seeing it. And the wildest part is, once people started noticing the emotional shape shifting, they couldn't stop seeing it everywhere. Every appearance felt calibrated. Every interview felt adjusted. Like the story itself wasn't fixed, only the reaction she wanted was. One moment, she's the effortlessly modern mom, barefoot in sweats, just trying to live a normal life. The next moment, she's someone who barely survived an ordeal so intense it supposedly changed her forever. Same pregnancy, same timeline, completely different emotional framing. And then came the rumors. The ones nobody officially confirmed, but nobody could fully ignore either. Whispers about pharmaceutical connections floated around. Vague, shadowy claims with no solid proof, but they still became part of the conversation because they landed in a space already filled with confusion. When facts feel slippery, even weak rumors find oxygen. Then Trevor's name entered the chat. Her ex-husband. Allegedly, something he said circulated online, claims about a hysterectomy being a major issue during their marriage. Now, that's a huge claim. And it came with a massive disclaimer because breakups aren't exactly neutral ground. Emotions run hot, people say things, but still, people noticed how that rumor plugged directly into the already messy timeline questions. It didn't prove anything, but it made people pause. What really stuck was how often the emotional version of the story changed depending on the platform. It didn't feel like natural reflection over time. It felt curated, tailored. One audience got relatability, another got heartbreak, another got resilience. Each one one worked perfectly for where she was and what she needed at that moment. And then there were the silences, the gaps, the questions that were answered without actually being answered, long emotional explanations that somehow avoided basic logistics. She'd spend ages talking about feelings, inner journeys, emotional pain, but simple questions about dates or medical specifics, those got blurred, redirected, softened, selective transparency, share enough to seem open, keep enough hidden to stay in control, and then the belly is seemingly gone as she leaves. And I've never had my pregnant belly drop down to my knees ever. Not in an obvious way. People started cataloging these moments, not just contradictions, omissions. When she'd pivot, when she'd generalize, when she'd respond emotionally instead of factually. And the thing about gaps is they invite speculation way more than direct answers ever would. When something feels missing, people want to fill it in. Some defended her, saying it was about privacy, fair. Others said it looked strategic, also fair. Either way, the result was the same. More curiosity, more analysis, more attention. And in royal life, this stood out even more. Royal pregnancies are usually locked down. Dates, protocols, announcements, confirmations, everything documented, everything structured. But somehow this pregnancy existed in a fog. Emotional clarity, factual blur, then came the physical footage again, the biomechanics. Pregnant women carrying significant weight move differently, balance shifts, center of gravity changes, squatting becomes harder, heels become torture, yet there were clips of her crouching smoothly, moving fast, bending with ease, and women watching those clips felt something was off in their bones. That's not judgment. That's lived experience. Then the bigger implication whispered itself into the conversation, quietly at first, then louder. If surrogacy or alternative arrangements were involved, there'd be questions about protocol, line of succession rules, not moral questions, not political ones, just rules that already exist. Tom Bower never said this outright. He didn't need to. He just showed how the narrative behaved. And that's what people couldn't shake. The pattern. Child support and pay my rent. Your opinion is irrelevant cause I'm a baby mama. I can do what I want. What Bower really exposed wasn't a secret document or a smoking gun. He exposed a method, a way stories bend, a way facts become flexible, a way authenticity and performance blur until they're indistinguishable. It wasn't about proving a lie, it was about showing how narratives adapt to survive. And once that clicked, people started watching differently. Every interview, every quote, every silence. The story never settled because settling would mean surrendering control. And control was the constant. What started as observations turned into a global obsession. YouTube broke it down, podcasts dissected it, comment sections turned into war zones, and suddenly the question wasn't what happened, it became what feels believable. One side saw too many inconsistencies to ignore, the other saw manipulation and out of context nitpicking. Both sides were convinced. And that's the power of this saga. It doesn't rely on proof. It thrives on perception. So when Meghan came along into the scene, I just thought this is fascinating. How is this going to play out? To tell the truth, I spoke to very few. Bower never tried to control where the conversation went. He didn't need to. Once the pattern was visible, people took it everywhere. And now even silence speaks. Every question not addressed becomes louder. Every detail skipped becomes suspicious. The internet learned how to read the gaps. And that's the loop. She speaks. Analysts observe. The internet dissects. Silence follows. Speculation grows, then something new drops, and it all starts again. No ending, no resolution, just evolution. What Bower really showed wasn't inconsistency, it was adaptability. Emotion replacing facts. Attention outweighing accountability. Whether you call that manipulation or masterful storytelling depends on where you stand. One thing is undeniable though, people can't stop watching. Because every answer creates new questions. Every explanation leaves something unexplained. And as long as the narrative never settles, the curiosity never dies. So now the question isn't what happened. It's this, after everything you've seen, are these honest mistakes or something far more calculated? That's where this story lives now. Right in that uncomfortable space where certainty disappears and interpretation takes over. And that's why this saga isn't ending anytime soon. Ding, anytime soon. Ding, anytime soon.